Mass. Welcome to those folks who are remote and those folks who are here in the room. I'm looking at our camera. It's tilted very high up.
Oh, yeah.
Kind of pointing up. So apologies if you can't see us too easily.
You adjust it? I mean, just to
it's supposed to be auto adjusting.
It was pointed at me earlier when I was talking.
Ready to try and break it. Whoop. There.
Oh.
It's supposed to move by itself. Thank you, Alyssa and Shannon, for letting people in. Just keep letting folks in as they come. I'm Josh Kelly, the Solid Waste Program Manager, and with me today is many people from the Solid Waste Program, who many of you know. I'm just going to jump right in and go to introductions with Vermont Emergency Management. Before I do, I just want to say that we've gone through some historic flooding events in the state of Vermont. Many people here have been through Hurricane Irene of 2011, which actually got the state to stand up a state debris contractor, which Stephen holds for us now that we no longer have Buzz. Thank you, Stephen, for that role. And we used it in the 2023 flood and helped out many of your communities. And in 2024, we had another one, and we used state resources mostly for that. Thanks to Ben Gothier, who's here, who helped out tremendously with that event. So, but our Vermont emergency management staff have been really, really helpful in developing ideas for responding to disaster to them, and shared the Vermont Materials Management Plan and said, this is another pathway that we can help deal with waste from disasters. So together we came up with what you all are building in your SWIPs, your solid waste implementation plans. We hope to get to some of your questions today, but first I will introduce our great Vermont Emergency Management staff. I'll go to Emily first.
Perfect. I'm Emily Harris. I'm the Engagement Section Chief at Vermont Emergency Management. 6 of my staff are regional coordinators that work directly with towns. Every town has an emergency management director. It's an appointed position, usually a volunteer position. They're responsible for maintaining their local emergency management plan. And as we've seen in disasters, are a lot in the dark when it comes to debris management and needs a lot of support. With that, I'll turn it over to Ron Pentkowski from our recovery section, who can speak about funding.
Hello, everyone. Ron Pentkowski, Public Assistance Program Manager for the Recovery Section at VEM. Nice to meet you all.
Thanks for being here, Ron and Emily. Is there anybody else from your office?
So it looks like Kim is going to be joining us. Kim is Ron's counterpart over in the recovery section.
We also
Anybody
have
can see.
Lisa Sheffield.
Go ahead. Yeah, Lisa, would you like to introduce yourself?
Sure. I'm Lisa Scheffler. I'm with Vermont Emergency Management in the Recovery Division. I work for Kim and with Ron and Mark.
Great. All right. Well, let's jump in. And I think what we want to do is kind of walk you through the disaster debris plan. Alyssa, if you don't mind sharing screens, we can do that. My goal for today is really to hear from you what your questions are, to explain to you what's required, and also talk about just like, does this work, or will that work, or will you accept this, or how long do we have for that? Those sorts of things. So I'm just going to give it like a pretty high level overview, and then we can dive into the different sections. But first of all, you'll notice it's in Excel. We used a table-based format because we're asking for data from you. Sometimes people say plan with a capital P and people think they have to write a novel. That is not the intent here. The intent is to get data that the state can use to help people out in the state of a disaster. I want to highlight some work Ben Gothier did trying to call a number of towns, a bunch of those emergency contacts, town by town, and not all of those numbers were accurate. And he was chasing, tail chasing, basically, in time of disaster, trying to find ways of helping, but without being able to connect the dots. So in some cases here, we're asking our solid waste management entities to make a connection with their local emergency contact so that we can use it if we need to. So that's why we're using Excel-based, and that's why this is more about collecting data than it is about planning with a lot of written word. So walking through this, the first thing that is talked about are 3 major priorities, or 3 main types of debris that are that are experienced in a disaster. And for us, the state, in the solid waste program, are hazardous materials, general debris like construction, what we would think of as trash in many cases, but it's often demolition debris, and a sopping wet couch from a basement. And then 3 is like inert, what we call inert or vegetative debris, a tree across a driveway, could even be parts of a stacked stone foundation that's collapsed, that's now being put out on the curb. So to meet those needs, we set up this plan for our municipalities to complete. And as you walk through, the first topic is disaster debris. So Alyssa, if you'll just scroll down to A, I guess, we can look at that.
So this first tab
Yeah.
is the instructions.
Thanks.
But you're welcome to, walk.
Maybe that's probably enough to go through. So the first one is asking for contacts, the emergency contacts. And maybe, Emily, I could ask you to just talk a little bit about your history with collecting these, who you ask for those persons to be in the town,
Yeah.
how the Swimmies can connect with that.
Yeah, so every town has to submit a local emergency management plan after town meeting day, but now before June 1st. In that plan, they identify their first point of contact as their emergency management director. Again, that is a mostly volunteer position, but every town is required to have one. Then they have 2 additional contacts that they identify. Who else do you want us to reach out to during a disaster? The public contact information for the emergency management director is actually on our website, and I put a link in the chat here. So that's a good first step for anyone. I would say make that contact far in advance of any disaster happening, because that is a public contact method. Sometimes they put their town office, sometimes they put a random email. It might be a Gmail. It's whatever they want for members of the public to contact them at. But we update that at least annually through their local emergency management plan. However, during a disaster, when we learn about contacts being incorrect, we also update that to make sure we've got as current a list as possible. But due to changes in town staff, changes in contact information, whatever, throughout the year, things do change. But yeah.
And we intend to, we're asking Swimmies for this information one time during the 5-year SWIP term. When we get it, we intend to share it with Vermont Emergency Management so we can compare notes, really. If you have any question, you can, about who this contact is, can they seek out Vermont Emergency Management for help if that website is down?
Yeah, well, so the website wouldn't be down, but the thing that I expect will probably be different here is your contact may not be the emergency management director, right? Like it might be the public works person, it might be one of those individuals. And so that's the other thing that might be a discrepancy here.
Can you tell us when when the town plans are due?
Yep, they're due by June 1st.
By June
So,
1st.
yep, after town meeting day, before June 1st. Now, when I say due by June 1st, what's the consequence for not turning it in by June 1st? You get a decreased ERAF rate. So, is everyone here familiar with the Emergency Relief and Assistance Fund? Okay, so after a presidential disaster declaration, the federal government will take 75% of the cost of the disaster. The remaining 25% is split between the town and the state. How much of that the state absorbs is based on how much pre-work someone does. And so if a town fails to have their local emergency management plan, then they will not get an increased rate from the state for that. So, but they have 30 days to get into compliance. So it gives them, anyway.
Thanks for the
So it's a little bit wishy-washy, but yes.
So in the past, the regional planning commissions used to collect all this information and they used to assist the towns in developing these documents. I know there's some changes going on as far as, EMPGs and things like that, but it just seems like there's duplication of effort here. And it seems to me it would be much more efficient if the solid waste districts just contacted their regional planning commission and to work with them instead of them going out and hunting for this information. I work for a regional planning commission. I also work in solid waste, and it can be very trying sometimes getting this contact information.
I think we're absolutely supportive of any way you can get the information.
I'll speak to that for a second. We just don't have any funding at Vermont Emergency Management for the Regional Planning Commission work right now. So if regional planning commissions have another source of funding to do that work, that's great and wonderful. We just have no source of funding right now.
Thanks, Emma. Tom, and thanks for raising that the regional planning commissions can be a resource in gathering this data. I have heard before, and Emily's familiar with this.
Your little one is a teenager.
Oops.
So we mute
Everybody.
Yeah,
Oh, Dara, I think you're live.
I can't get to it yet, but I'm getting to it now. Dara, you're unmuted, so we're just going to mute you. Hang on. Anyway.
Well, I will speak to Dara's comment in the chat while we're waiting. So after a disaster happens, Vermont Emergency Management has different funding that we pay the RPC for them to reach out to towns to say, did you have any impacts from this disaster and what are those impacts? And so through that local liaison role that Dara's talking about, we are making contact with the town. It's how we learn about some bad contacts during that, because they have access to all of our contacts when they're making that call.
And Dara Zink is with
Bennington RPC.
RPC. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. I didn't realize we had some RPCs here, but that's great. That's great. That's right, because we have Bennington is the RPC and the district are similar. Where's Shannon? She's not here right now.
Oh, she's on the.
She's on the call. All right. Well, the part of the disconnect for us when we had our 2023 flood was that Swimmies didn't know who the emergency contact was. So we thought if we can get this list, it can benefit you and it can benefit the state, and it can also benefit the feds if the feds are coming in to help us. We did use EPA in the past to help with cleanup. And so some of these contacts were just helpful to have in multiple directions.
And then I think Emily's point that it might be a different person, because this is not the whole emergency necessarily. This is just who is the point person in terms of like solid waste debris management.
This is sort of a tangent, but it'd be helpful to kind of get a summary of what everybody's roles are in an emergency like a flood. So for example, like if VEM is already reaching out to each of the towns and surveying for damages and disaster debris need, like we could take that off our plate and let you guys take care of that. And then we can reach out to those towns that have experienced damages, work with them on setting up those debris sites, something like that. But just so there's like a clear order of who's doing what.
Yeah, and I'll say, so what happens is the local liaisons are part of our state emergency operations center. So that's where we're coordinating the statewide response to a disaster. DEC is also actually in that state emergency operations center. So I'm wondering if we can somehow get the information to DEC to coordinate that back with the solid waste management entities during a disaster.
Yeah, that's probably the EEOs, the environmental enforcement officers that are.
Yeah, they're the appointees.
Yeah. Let me just say, I understand there's many cooks, and I have never experienced it greater than when we've been in a time of disaster. Dennis Beckert was with me with that. I know Stephen, I know Ben did, and it's very frustrating. I know Theron lived it. Who's doing what? Is the city of Montpelier doing this? Is Berrytown doing that? There's a lot of hurry up and wait, and felt like wasted effort sometimes. That said, the whole intent here is helping people in the greatest public good, and this data doesn't seem like wasted effort to me. I know we had a lot of false starts without it. So I think for swimmies who are looking or confused or trying to struggle with this, first I would say reach out to the folks on Ann's team. That's Alyssa, Shannon, and Chris. When you run into an issue, and then we can run it up the chain. We can even consult Vermont Emergency Management if we need help. We can work other channels to try and help you get this data. But it's not meant to be a really big lift, ideally. Others online have questions or comments that I passed over? On this part? All right, well, feel free to ask those later. Alyssa, I think we can
Yep,
move to
move to the
this
next tab.
paging.
Sure.
So again, it's a list, and Ben, if I could ask you, maybe you could tell a little story about how we came about, or I don't know if you have anything you want to share, but just how this could be helpful in a time of disaster, like 101 type stuff.
Yeah, I think sort of what we're looking for here is just to have locally available staging areas for disaster impacted hazardous wastes, right? Because a lot of times there's a bit of a lag between people are impacted, the water recedes, and they want to start cleaning out their home immediately. There's a bit of a lag before oftentimes the services can be mobilized. So we're thinking it's a pretty good to have in the back pocket, like predetermined locations within each town or regionally even, just that show like, okay, if this happens, we can grab these materials, we can stage them here, we can notify people as they're filling up dumpsters, keep these hazardous waste and dangerous waste out of the trash. You can bring them over, to whatever the location is. And then, that buys time for the state or the state contractors to figure out how to do pickup and proper disposal at that time. So that was the idea behind these. You can use, it depends, it's sort of town by town, situation by situation. There might be a transfer station that has ample room. There might just be a, town garage that has a covered pad or something. It doesn't have to be fancy, and we can work with you on kind of the criteria that we're looking for, but it's really, really simple stuff.
And since I have you talking and you're on the certification team in Dennis's shop of the solid waste program, the first thing for SWMEs, if you run into a question, you're not sure where these should be, you're not sure how to get started, you have questions, talk to Alyssa, talk to Shannon, talk to Chris. But after that, I think there's a chance of talking to Dennis's team and people like Ben. They know facilities. Some of these transfer stations, town transfer stations, could be good locations if they're not going to be inundated themselves with regular garbage. And that's what we've had the problem, where the trucks need to come in and drop regular garbage. And so they're going to run over the barrels of paint and the paint thinner that's out there. And that's where then we get crossed paths. So let's go to Heather and then we'll go to Kelly.
So on all the towns' new emergency management plans, are they going to have a site listed for their town, or is this something we have to come up with the towns?
No, it's not in the local emergency management plan. So the information that's in there is where they're having shelters, where they're having their EOC. So it doesn't list this information in there.
Yeah, so Heather, let me unpack that even more. So I think in the fine print here, it says 1 per SWME, Alyssa. Am I right about
Yes.
that? So we are at minimum asking the Lamoille district to identify a place where hazardous materials could be staged for all of your municipalities in the case of a disaster. We encourage 1 per town. What we saw when Johnson was flooded was people ran in and cleaned up really fast, and God knows where a lot of that material went. I believe that most of it went into the dumpsters. I know in the areas that I walked around and volunteered in, I unpacked a dumpster of paint cans and flammable products and put them safely in a safe place. It was an entire dumpster just full of that. I've never seen anything like it in my life. So the bottom line is, the first thing you need to do is think about at least 1 place where you can have a temporary staging area. And you're right that it's not in sync with the, what are these called, Emily? The
Local emergency management.
local emergency management plans. But this was our pathway to try and encourage these temporary sites. Go ahead, Heather. Do you have
Right.
thoughts?
Oh, so without that requirement with the towns, all my towns could say, not here.
They could.
Is that true?
Yeah.
Okay.
But you'd still need to have something in one of your towns. You need to have something in one place for the district. That could be at
Understood,
one
but
of your,
since the towns themselves are not being required to do that, that's my only thing is I'm going, because right, who wants that in their backyard?
And Heather, this
I'm
has
just
been
a
gone through.
little concerned. I'm sorry. I'm just a little concerned that this is on the SWMEs and not on any of the towns as well.
SWMEs are
Because
towns,
everything else
Heather.
seems like it's a relationship, and this one thing does not.
Heather, I was just going to volunteer that we actually worked with a number of towns in your district to identify these locations. So I think they might, at least the ones we've already worked with and established those areas, probably understand the benefit of it because they've already
Okay,
sort of reaped the rewards.
So there are.
I can.
Yeah,
I was just going to say I can share you.
That would be awesome.
I can share that list with you. Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
so there's already a list somewhere.
Yes, but to be clear, Heather, you are the municipality. The towns have all abdicated their responsibility to you. If you're not compliant with this standard, all of your towns are not compliant with their SWIP and will receive enforcement from the state of Vermont. We don't want to go there. That's not our intent. We think Lamoille is wonderful and we love those towns. The goal is that solid waste management is municipal responsibility that is to be managed by solid waste. If a towns want to form districts, your community's formed a district to solve that. This is how we're requiring it 1 per SWME and encouraging each town. So if there's some just dialogue that needs to happen, we're willing to do that. Let me just be
Yep.
clear. This is not an HHW facility. This is a temporary, this is often a parking lot with a lot of paint is mostly what you see. Theron, you can talk about what Montpelier saw and Barry.
But there's already a
There's a
list,
lot.
is what I'm hearing is that we already have list of in different areas that have a staging area.
Yeah, and that's where maybe Ben can talk to you offline and might be able to help you get further down the field. That's why I
Okay,
brought such a broad team today, because each of these people on the solid waste program have taken on a job of specialization. Stephen with debris, Ben with hazardous materials. And so I'm trying to make a lot of connections at the same time, which is not easy, but at least we're not in a disaster at this moment. Theron remembers how many times we talk on the phone or meet on a Saturday, and Stephen was out straight. It was not easy times. There's a question from Kelly, and then we'll.
And then there's a couple in the chat.
Yeah.
Thanks, guys. And if I kind of cut out a little bit, I'm sorry, I'm on the road today. But when we're identifying these areas, because I am anticipating not just for the towns that we, help with their SWIPs, but other towns that say, like maybe Lamoille, like, oh, there's a transfer station in Hyde Park. Are we to give these locations under the assumption that it's going to be a declared emergency and therefore our certification requirements would be waived? Because I'm not allowed to accept HHW at Hyde Park.
Yeah, the state's assumption is that these would not necessarily be certified facilities and that there would be some sort of disaster declared emergency. The governor often gives executive orders that give leniency. I mean, I would say, Dennis and Ben, please chime in, but having it at a certified facility is ideal in a lot of ways. If it's not already inundated, I'm patting Stephen, with massive trucks with claws crushing the waste, trying to manage debris at the same time. Ben, do you want to speak to?
Yeah, I agree. I mean, I think Kelly, I think it would follow a similar process as before, where we issued a letter to all facilities saying, under these provisions, certain things are waived. And I think that would fall under that category. It would be included.
Okay, thank you. Just that way I'm assuming I'm going to start getting questions from some towns and districts of if our facilities could fill this role for them. So I just want to make sure before we, agree to that, if we think we have the capacity, that we'll have some protections, that we won't be in violation of our certifications.
We said publicly owned.
Does it say that there's any room in the MMP for lease? I can't remember.
I would have to pull that up, but I'm sharing.
Okay, no, you're sharing your screen right now. Description of the town. Kelly, we generally prefer publicly owned sites. And part of that, as Ben, I'm trying to remember talking with Mike Nucci about why we did that. I think it was for control reasons, but
Access probably.
But what FEMA really wants to know is certified sites. So even if they're private, I think
if Cersei's goes out to pick it up, didn't they have some issue with going on private property?
Yeah, they that's like a whole separate side of FEMA.
Yeah,
but if it's a certified solid waste facility, I think you'd be okay.
Oh yeah, that totally.
Yeah,
that's
so I think our intent was public locations because we weren't thinking this would always be, Kelly, at a facility, at a solid waste facility. If it's at a solid waste facility, I actually gained, in my experience, more comfort. We have financial assurance. We have a relationship already. What am I getting at? Oh, what I would like to see, Kelly, with your towns that may ask you to solve this need for them is some sort of agreement that the town can demonstrate in their SWIP that they're working with Casella, or they're working with Myers, or they're working with ABC Facility 101. That it can be a paper agreement, but something I think would be worth the state seeing, to see that there's this relationship, because this is really to be used in an emergency to serve a public need. That's the goal.
Okay, understood. That was really my main question was, we want to help. And, I think we tried with CV during the last flood, and just making sure that if we say, okay, yeah, I do think I have the capacity here, that we are covered, legally on our end to do so.
Yep. let's explore that through your SWIP process and see what kind of response you get from your towns, and we can talk through it.
Well, the SWIPs are adopted, so this is just the plan process.
The plan process, sorry. Yeah.
Yep.
Thank you.
Thanks, guys.
What question in the chat should we go to, Alyssa?
I mean, it was the publicly owned. Was the question? Can you scroll back?
Impervious surface.
Oh, the impervious surface. Yeah.
I'm scrolling through them now. So yeah, so Pam, I think it was Mary O'Brien, does it have to be a publicly owned hazardous materials staging area? Again, I think ideally it would be, if the SWIMI wants to propose a public-private partnership with some sort of agreement between the parties, we would be open to entertaining that. So let's talk through what scenarios you're thinking of and then look at the MMP for its applicability.
And then impervious surface, I think the answer is yes.
Generally, that's encouraged. Some of these parking lots at public work sites may be dirt. Ben's experienced that. I've experienced it.
Yeah, it's take what you can get sometimes, you know what I mean? Compacted gravel is probably sufficient, but impervious is preferred. But you can't always have perfect scenario.
You always put down poly.
We have done that. And one of the things I thought is actually we should be good if we showed you some pictures of what they looked like during the floods of 2023, 2024. They were parking lots with poly tarps down and pallets, and then different signage for different materials, flammables in one area, basic latex paint, because that paint came in great amounts. And then some acids and bases, things like that, because there was several cleaning products that came in as well.
And then I think there's also a question about whether they had to be covered.
No, they don't. It's a staging area. It's completely to pop up and serve a need. Most of the stuff is on the curb anyway during the clean out, and it's out in the elements. The real goal is just not to have it to get knocked over or to be in an area where kids are going to, try and trample it or something. Did I miss anything else? Does the staging area need to be paved? I saw that one. Okay.
Minimum standards for the site: fenced, locked, covered, etc.
There is no minimum standards along that line. Chris from NEK, thanks for asking that question. Again, I want to go back to leaning on Dennis and the certifications team. When we say that working with certified facilities is ideal, that's because many of these facilities can control access. And as Stephen knows very well, FEMA often requires that. So if you're looking for places to go, if your transfer station network or recycling center network can be utilized, I would say explore that. But we have run into situations where the facility was too small for anyone to get into really easily and to have a place to store stuff, so that vehicles were going to be trampling the containers that would be set up, and that would be bad. So I think it's really case by case.
Cam asked if we can stage brush and clean wood at local fire department lots or transfer stations without a permit or certification amendment.
We'll get to that in a second. Let's go to John Malter if it's on this hazardous management storage area. Go ahead, John.
Yeah, I was just thinking about containment around any stored hazardous materials, knowing that sometimes containers aren't necessarily closed completely. And if you get rain or you get any kind of leakage, you want to keep it nearby. So are we looking at any kind of berming to deal with these things?
I mean, we would be supportive of anything extra the SWIMIs would be ready to do with their towns in an emergency. That could be just tarps to spread on top so that water doesn't infiltrate into the containers. I experienced this in Montpelier. I'm pointing at Theron. I literally put a bucket over an empty container so that rain wouldn't keep filling it up. I remember doing that just because I was there physically, and that's like it's a no regret strategy. But John, as far as what the minimum standard is, we're really just looking for you to give us a place where we can tell people to put stuff, and that you could tell people to put stuff in an emergency. And certainly think critically about where the best place in your community is. I actually respect all the people here as solid waste managers to come up with some really good ideas. But it's better to do it now than when we're running around with our heads cut off, which has happened to us, a few floods. And I will say, I'll throw Ben is an expert now, having dealt with 2 floods on this. So if you need to consult him, feel free.
Got asked if towns can partner to share staging areas, and yes, so that's 1 per district per SWIMI region. Somewhere between 1 per town and 1 per SWIMI.
Yeah, and I'd say we encourage it per town is because it's sort of certain towns get hit and others don't. And so if it's Kirby and Sheldon Springs and Morrisville that get hit with microburst storms, and they don't have the staging area, that's going to be really a bummer for them. And that's what we've seen. We've seen towns that really didn't have any resources because no one talked to them about what the worst case might be before it happened. Actually, VEM does that every day of their work, and they probably feel like it's on deaf ears. Is there any other questions that I've missed on this, Alyssa, on hazardous material staging, or anything anybody in the room wants to ask or say? Okay,
To the next.
let's go on to the next category. Get ready for another list. So we actually debated this internal to the program, and this is about the regular trash, the regular C&D construction demo waste that comes out of a disaster. Buzz had in the state's disaster plan locations like CV transfer where this material could go. Many of you know where this place would likely be in your community already. These would be some of your major transfer stations. Some of you operate them. Some of you rely on the private sector to solve this. Either way, we're just asking you to tell us the location. This wouldn't take long. We probably could come up with an idea for you. This is just where would trash and general debris go in the state of, states in your area is in a disaster zone and you need to move trash, C&D, where would it go? These could be private or public facilities. We're just trying to get a good list and use you as a consult in that dialogue. Questions?
I assume you'd prefer a certified facility for
Yes. This is certified facilities. Thank you, Theron. This is not hypothetical. It's not a temporary thing. This is places that are already set up to do this. Yeah. Mary, go ahead.
So I'm not sure I understand this question. So the regular trash, wouldn't it go to our regular transfer stations?
Yes. Just tell us which ones you think it would go to.
Well, it would go to all of them, right?
And then give us the list of all of them, but give us the ones that you think are probably, what do we ask for? We can help you with this list. Some of it you might not have the cert ID, but we can work with you to get that. It's just good for us to know the towns served by the facilities. You may have better local information, Mary, on it. For example, when Stephen is looking at where disaster can go and he quickly finds out that the Southern Windsor region has been hit by a disaster, he knows Springfield Transfer Station or Alva Waste is the place where stuff can go because it serves the majority of towns. So it's a quick and easy place for him to figure that out when he's leveraging state resources. Anything you want to say about that, Stephen?
And sometimes we don't have all the up-to-date info, like the point of contacts for these transfer stations, and that's
I see.
necessary for us to have, especially in those times.
Yeah, for better or worse, the solid waste program is on a 10-year cert basis, which gives a lot of leniency to the facilities in terms of how often they're talking to us, but it also means we don't hear from them for a while in terms of the recert process. Dennis's team is recertifying all the time, but we don't always get the latest contact. So I think this is a bare minimum kind of thing. It may feel like busy work. I really hope it's not for you. And it gives us a database to pull from.
Yeah.
We'll go to Kelly and then we'll go to John. Thanks, Mary. Go ahead,
Thanks.
Kelly.
Just so, again, I can kind of anticipate what kind of workload's going to come my way. Are you expecting agreements on this one as well? Like towns come to us and say, we're going to use, Highgate transfer in our plan, and you want that sort of like public-private agreement on each and every one of these when they list us, or they're just going to write our facility down and then they're done?
I think they're going to write your facility down and be done. They don't need to have a piece of paper with an agreement with you, Kelly, with the Casella facility. I will say the SWMI who's writing it down should be fairly accurate with the towns and counties generally served. I mean, the goal is if Hyde Park transfer station really doesn't serve the town of Stowe and never takes waste there because they don't like them, I don't know, then that shouldn't be listed. It doesn't help us solve a need. But if it does, then it's helpful.
Got it. And I guess in that same lens, so that we can be helpful, if any of the towns are unclear of which of our facilities their waste goes to, they can contact me and I can point them in the right
Yep.
direction.
Yep. And by the way, this doesn't have to be the last meeting on this. We could create an FAQ on this. We could create some more information for swimmies so they learn how to do this. My encouragement would be start the process, reach out to Alyssa, Chris, or Shannon, find out what the questions are. They can bring them to Ann's team. We can manage that and start to get similar responses to each of you as we find out where the holes are in this.
And we already have the pretty lengthy FAQ that we'll send out after this meeting.
Thank you. I see a question from Pam, and then I'll go to John. The tonnage limits would be allowed to be expanded during times of emergency without impacting the CERTs. That's generally correct, Pam. During times of emergency, as Ben said, it's very common for the governor to issue an executive orders that give not only hours of operation extensions, but daily tonnage limit extensions. Dennis, is there anything else I'm missing?
No, that's
That's
pretty much
usually
it.
what's in there.
Storing things off the tip floor.
Off the tip floor, yeah.
Allowances.
Those are the kinds of allowances we've had so that waste can move.
Of course, you'd want to pick one that has a big enough space for extra capacity.
That's where the planning comes in.
Yeah. I would generally say that tip floor facilities are very much in demand during a disaster. I can't say it any other way. Tip floors mean excavators can deconstruct construction debris and make things so they can actually be tractor trailer loaded and moved.
Okay, I have one
yeah.
quick more question right along with this. So in some of the towns in the past, they've used private residences sand pits to temporarily stage storm debris that ends up like brush, clean wood, that ends up getting chipped. Under this scenario here, would that not be allowed anymore?
We're going to get to that with the inert stump dumps next, Pam.
Okay.
This is for trash and drywall. It's for basically waste we wouldn't let sit in a sand pit forever, without a permit.
Okay. So even for like C&D, you would not allow that if it was just inert material?
Well, C&D that's what column, the next tab D is. We're going to go to that topic of, but I generally speaking, drywall, shingles, and polystyrene insulation is not what we're considering inert. It's trash that needs to be managed.
More along the lines of like concrete, bricks.
Yep.
Things.
We're going to get to that. Bricks, concrete, vegetative waste like branches and to be chipped. We're going to get to that.
Okay. Thanks,
John Malter, sorry to keep you waiting.
That's okay, but I know that disasters only happen between 9 and 5 on weekday mornings or afternoons, but what about weekends and times when these facilities aren't open, as far as getting a contact phone number for somebody who is not going to be there when you call during the operating hours? It's going to be more of a challenge, and I think we need to have some after hours phone numbers.
I mean, I certainly encourage that. We don't require it, but anything the swimmies can do to get themselves better prepared is better for their communities, John. So yeah, you're bringing up things that are absolutely ideal in an emergency. And if you want to make it part of your plan, if you want to go above and beyond, we would highly encourage that.
Having had that experience, yeah. All right.
Many facilities extend their hours as well during the emergency time, so it's not uncommon for them to be open a lot more often.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, we've seen the leniency on hours of operation come out of governor's executive orders, and then facilities usually do take advantage of that. Has been our experience. Okay, any other questions on C&D, general debris? I'll call it trash and C&D type management. Any other questions there? Oh, we have something from Kim.
Well, that was an answer to Pam's questions.
Oh, okay. Thank you.
What'll be coming up next.
Yeah. All right, I think move on to tab D.
Yeah, thanks. So Pam, this is the section where this is the other material type we see. It might actually, Dennis, to pick on you in the solid waste rules, might be good to talk a little bit about our exemptions that already exist.
I can talk.
Yeah, Stephen, please.
Sure.
About the town and land that you own and that kind of.
Yeah, so one thing that came up a lot in previous disasters with towns and swimmies highlights an exemption in our rules saying that this inert type of debris can be moved within the same publicly owned property, types of property. So if there was inert debris out in the right of way, the town that it's in or the swimmy could take that debris and move it to another publicly owned site from that same town or swimmy, and it could be disposed of without needing a permit at all.
And you'd still get FEMA reimbursed.
Yeah, and that would qualify still for FEMA reimbursement.
And it gets FEMA reimbursement because our rules specifically exempt moving inert debris from a place of ownership to another place of ownership by the same owner. And the right of way is deemed as within the town's domain. It also, I think, is in the state's domain. So VTrans moved a lot of inert debris during both flood events and did not contact us for a permit, and they were able to get their FEMA reimbursement as far as I know.
Yeah, I have a question because I remember that there were some issues with FEMA reimbursement for Berry City because they ended up moving a bunch of stuff off that main drag off the right of way. And I think they put it on private property.
Right, because that private property, like they don't control that private property, and that's where the issue.
And that's why we're asking every swimmy to cite one inert debris stump dump by year 4 of this 4-year plan. Because we had a sonic burst of something. We had a big windstorm in December 2022, or was it 24? I think it was 22. It was just before the big flood. It was December before. Wind came from the east. East Montpelier got slammed with trees. St. Albans took a bunch of vegetative waste to a private land and wasn't able to get reimbursement for any of that work. And we couldn't help them. And they were really upset about it. And it was all we could do was just say, I'm sorry.
You can bring it to a private property if it's a certified solid waste facility.
That's right. That's right.
Get reimbursed.
So this standard is to list a publicly owned or controlled categorical disposal site, AKA stump dumps, that are authorized for debris disposal in the swimming region for material that cannot be managed within the right of way, chipped or tossed into the woods. So what that's getting at is Vermont Emergency Management and us and VTrans, we often encourage managing waste that is inert on site, the lowest carbon footprint, just put it in, and that's what utility crews do all the time. If that can be done, fine. If the landowner wants the wood for firewood, great. Nobody has a problem with that. But what we see is when roads are congested, culverts are blocked, and material needs to move, stump dumps are a key part of recovering from a disaster. That's why this is here. Yeah, go ahead, Pam.
I'm sorry, I think I missed what you said. Did you say that it had to be a publicly owned facility that would accept stumps?
Oh.
It says publicly owned or controlled. I'm trying to remember the Shannon, maybe if you have the MMP in front of you, you can quote the
I mean,
text.
it does say public and private partnerships are acceptable with
That's
the written
right.
agreement.
Thank you. So public-private partnerships are acceptable as long as there's some sort of written agreement. So this goes back to Kelly's question. Let's say Hyde Park transfer station owned, I don't even know this, I don't have it on the top of my head, but a private facility is run and has a stump dump, and they are willing to take this inert debris from any town in this swimmy during a disaster, send a written letter, and the town or swimmies can use that location as the location. There's nothing that we don't want to stand in the way of the private industry fulfilling this need as long as they're there when we need them.
Yeah, 'cause the biggest problem that
so we have two privately owned facilities that would accept all of this, and I've talked to both of them, and they said that they could accept anything that we threw at them during an emergency. So we just need something from those facilities that say that they would accept that material.
Yep.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, because one of the biggest problems we ran into the past couple of events is either one, we'd have a publicly owned stump dump, but they use it for their own municipality only. They wouldn't accept it from anyone else. Or the private ones, some private ones wouldn't accept from anyone else, and they had it for their own personal business or something. So it is a major gap that we had.
And let me just be clear, the private one needs to be permitted. I know some people manage stuff and no one knows that they do it and it's not permitted. It needs to be a permitted facility, but there's a lot of them actually in the state. If you're curious about them and you don't know that they're in your area, the search team we could dig that out of data.
What if they're out of state? Because one of them is just across the border.
That's a good question. I think, my first off the cuff reaction is ideally it would be in-state, Pam, because I just don't know what I don't know about disasters knocking out transportation networks, but that can happen in-state too. You could argue that side of it.
Kim might be able to talk more, but I think as long as it's certified, they'd be able to, but we don't have that certification if it's out of state and we don't write it.
Right.
Yeah, and also, Stephen, if there's not any additional costs, to the state or to the applicant, whomever, for it being in another state, and it's cost reasonable, and something we can show that we utilize and pay for even in times of non-emergencies, then FEMA would allow it on their end.
I would thank you for that, Kim. And Pam, I would say bring us what your thoughts are and then let us assess it as part of the plan review process that we're going to go through. We're probably going to get these questions in multiple ways, and we can come back to the group with, this is what we learned after Pam asked this question. This is available to everybody. Those sorts of things are part of this back and forth process.
Okay.
I will go, sorry, go ahead.
You're good, Tom.
I will go to Tom Kennedy. I see in the chat, Chris asked a question about only town stump dumps that are willing to accept debris. So Chris, I think again, just like Pam's question, if you can give us the picture of how this debris would be managed in your region and how you would solve for a disaster event, you may be able to patch it together and cobble it together in such a way that Kirby will take from the 6 towns around it, and Derby will take from the 5 towns around it. I don't know what it is, but I think we're really just trying to see that there's a solution in your area should any part of your area get hit. We can come back to that. Tom, go ahead.
So an issue has always been is reimbursement for those accepting this woody debris. At times they didn't want to pay, or the revenue that you could get for accepting this stuff was very, very low. So there was very little incentive to try to create basically a hole and put all this stuff in, just to let you know.
Yeah, that's fair.
But if they couldn't we, isn't there a lot of alternate daily cover that's generated out of these type of events that
Again,
is an incentive?
you gotta chip it and all this. I mean, if the facility that's accepting this stuff could be assured that they were going to be paid to do all this chipping, and they could send it off as chip or whatever, that's one thing. But my experience, because I've been asked a number of times on a GOV property if we would host one of those, but it's basically they're saying, do us a favor and accept the stuff.
Stephen, what is your experience? I mean, basically FEMA and our series contractor, when the state stands it up, will go and collect the stuff, but needs a place to bring it. This is to find a place to bring it if we need to. And actually, I would advocate the categorical disposal facility, Tom, is not even a temporary area. It's a disposal site. You can leave it there. And that's the idea, that if you take out 16 stumps from the town of Plainfield, they can go to this place and just sit because no one wants to tub grind them because of the rocks stuck in there that'll break the tub grinder. Some realities of life are just too real to handle. So the reason we're trying to get stump dumps is so the stuff can just sit there and you don't have to try and landfill it, or you can keep it as local as possible and let it just.
But in previous floods, towns were just taking it and throwing it in their own stump dumps. And now that there's some sort of more of a certification, it's stricter. And so towns are less willing to want to do it. Just letting you know the reality. This is what we ran into 2 years ago. So
I'm not sure I understand what you mean by stricter. The solid waste program's rules haven't changed much on what it takes to get a stump dump certified. I think what you're saying is people who chip it don't get enough money for chipping it and are grumpy about that.
the towns have a limited area for which they have set aside for their own personal stump dump. What we generally run into is not all towns have them. And so towns, a neighboring town may say, can we bring our stuff to your facility? So it's not as easy as it sounds.
Yeah, I respect that.
Woody debris has always ended up someplace that people don't know about. Like Pam had mentioned, sometimes they end up in gravel pits and so on that the state just doesn't know about. That's the reality of it.
And
Just gone.
that'll just mean it's not going to be reimbursable for that work.
That's why we're trying to get that gravel.
Yeah. Well,
I just think we're just trying to get that gravel pit certified so that it can be used. If it's private industry owned and they want to use that gravel pit for that purpose, that's where a lot of our stump dumps are.
Yeah. Yep. Okay.
And I think that's exactly why we do recommend one per municipality, so that the exact issue that Tom brought up, it doesn't matter.
You also could demonstrate that you have the permit in place, that you have a private industry who operates a gravel pit, and in the case of an emergency would designate a part of the gravel pit for a disposal site, and that they never operate it a day at all until a disaster happens. That's fine. That's perfectly acceptable. It's meant as a place for stuff to go at the worst case. That's really what we're trying to plan for. Okay, so I think we covered a lot of ground. I feel like I over talked. I apologize to folks. Didn't cover from our swimming partners.
Because that is the end. The last page, the last tab is simply a signature, which is signed by the SWMI sort of on behalf of the towns. So you list the towns, but it's the SWMI who actually signs it.
Darren, let me go to Heather and then I'll go to you.
Sure.
Heather, go ahead.
So just a couple overall questions. So the timeline, we're not completing this until 2030, by 2030. That's question number one, and just why I have the mic open. And then where will this live?
So it's due with your year one SWIP report. So it'll be due next April 2027. And it is not a live document. We decided just to have it due once in the 5 years, unless you need to certify a stump dump, in which case you have until year 4 to finish that piece. So if that's the case, then you will resubmit the plan in year 4. If you already had the whole plan complete in year 1, then you don't resubmit it.
Thank you.
Thanks for that question, Heather. Okay, Darren.
So that was for vegetative, woody debris.
Could be like soil, silt, brick, mortar.
Okay.
Concrete.
So as far as bricks, concrete, stone, soil, all that stuff, that are we looking for like a permanent place for that, or is it like a staging area where it's going to be moved off later?
It's ideally permanent. It's categorical disposal. Yeah. It could be also a categorical recycling. Dennis, could you unpack that a little bit about the difference, just for education?
The difference between disposal and recycling.
The categorical disposal site versus categorical. They can. I would like them to be both, so you have all options. But go ahead.
Easy enough. Categorical disposal is a landfill for inert materials, things that don't leach.
Right.
So yeah, that, and then categorical recycling is just like if you're going to crush up the stone and mix it into aggregate or whatever, that would be a recycling facility.
And the reason I think it's advising to think about both is because, well, we didn't know this disaster was going to happen. Suddenly There's somebody who wants to lease it to get the concrete and crush it, which there's not a huge market for crushed concrete. But somebody wants to start a firewood business and cut up the trees. I don't even know what it is. But I'm just saying, if you have both options, then the material can move if it's valuable or has some value, or it can stay. But we're trying to plan for it staying, thinking this is a disaster. And once you put something down, the solid waste experience is it's very hard to get it back up again.
And it is common for people to just like to chip all the wood and then reuse those wood chips for something else.
Sure. Yeah, and in the actual disaster, we ran into the situation quite a bit where towns would call us and say, we have all this vegetative debris, where do we bring it? And I'm like, well, we don't know. Like, where would you bring it in your area? So we're trying to get out ahead of that.
Yeah.
Yeah. Other questions?
There's one from Scott in the
Oh,
chat.
thanks. By certified for private properties, is it a standard waste facility certification with the state, or is there a separate certification for emergencies? Scott, I think your question is about what is a categorical disposal site. That is a certified facility with the state. You would seek out Dennis's team to obtain a permit. It's not that complex of a permit, as I recall.
A certification for an emergency would be an IWMEA that we would do, but there's process to that, so it's going to take 2 weeks at least.
Yeah.
And so you're in an emergency, and I tell you got to hold on to this for 2 weeks. You're not too happy.
Yeah, there is a pathway for emergency disposal of inert debris, the insignificant waste management event application, IWMEA. But exactly like Dennis said, the town has the stuff now and a disaster hit and they're asking Dennis, where can I bring it? The IWMEA has a 15-day public comment period. It's not ideal when your truck is full and you need to move stuff off the road so people can get to work and kids can get to school. So that's why we're asking people to site a permanent facility now so that we're ready if it ever is needed.
So this is Tom again. I'm sorry to be such a pest on this, but so your signature page and under your note, you have basically two statements there. One says FEMA reimbursement for disaster management is not guaranteed. And then you say municipalities must strictly adhere to FEMA's eligibility requirements to track, blah, blah, blah. And when you say for the tracking and record keeping and everything, does that include everything, all the spreadsheets and tabs before this? I mean, what are they certifying? Because I'll tell you right now, there's no incentive for a town to sign this if they're not guaranteed reimbursement. So they may not sign it.
The note about FEMA is just to make the audience aware of what is required by FEMA. It's a sort of an awareness thing. It's not meant as a signature, so maybe we could think about the placement of this.
But
we're having
what's
people. Go ahead.
Go ahead. I'm sorry, Josh. I didn't mean to.
No. I mean, we're having people sign so that we just know that somebody agreed to this.
Only the SWMI signs it.
It's only the SWMI that signs it. You're just listing your towns that are covered by the SWMI below.
But you're saying to me as a SWMI director, I must strictly adhere to FEMA's eligibility requirements for debris management, monitoring, tracking, etc. I don't have enough staff. If I had another Irene, there's no way I'm controlling debris management for all these different things that we talked about. I had 6 towns that I couldn't even get to. So
yeah, I totally understand.
I can't in good conscience sign this to say I would be able to do that. You folks mentioned it, it was in Montpelier, the same thing. There was just piles of debris and, we do the best we can.
Isn't it?
But
doesn't each town become their own responsible applicant? It's not all on the burden of you. So
I think the note is in the wrong place.
It is not saying that.
And as far as, because each town has to adopt their own agreement that they're going to be responsible for the debris within their community, and it becomes eligible through their submission of their PA grant. And
That's right.
as always, we can never, ever 100% guarantee federal funding on anyone's behalf. The government would have to do that. And there's so many requirements that, that are looked at in order to determine eligibility. So, it has to be from a result of the disaster. It has to be within the right of way. And
FEMA changes their requirements depending on the disaster.
No, there's a whole
Oh.
debris course,
Yeah.
and it's pretty long, but if you're interested, I can send you some
No,
information.
I've done
It-
a lot of this.
Okay, but it
So
does have
this is-
the clear
and-
requirements of what's eligible.
Okay, so anyways, this signature page needs to be worked upon.
We
Yeah,
will move
we
the
hear
note. It was purely saying that we're not FEMA and we can't make any FEMA promises. That was the entire
Yeah,
purpose of
it's
the
being
note.
misinterpreted, Tom. We're not trying to get you to sign that you're gonna
No.
act like this. We're trying to, but maybe we'll just take it out. It's really to make anyone aware that there's all of these FEMA requirements when you try and get reimbursement, which you obviously are well educated on. The signature page is just to show the SWME prepared this and is aware of it. That's really it. Like, that somebody else didn't nefariously put it in on your behalf. God forbid those folks. I'll go to Pam and then I'll go to, actually, Theron, you were first. Go ahead. And then Pam, 1 sec.
Thanks. Yeah, it seems like really it's more of a caution that in order to receive that FEMA funding for the disaster, you've got to follow their process, and it is arduous.
Yes.
But all that, as in addition to all that, there's the when you as a municipality say, okay, we've hit our limit, like we can't deal with this, that's when you call in the state contract to mobilize their force that they have,
That's
right?
Stephen could talk about that.
And at that point, like it becomes part of the state public assistance project, right?
Yeah, and I don't know if it's in the instructions that say like the SWMEs and towns have the option to use our contract if we activate them during an emergency.
I think you gave us some
very-
language, as I recall.
I remember there being either the town, right there, the town can use their own equipment and personnel to collect, manage, and track debris, hire their own contractor, or they can use our state procured contract. This also will help us because I have to chase a lot of towns for MOUs before we're able to actually go and pick up debris, and this would actually bypass MOUs altogether, and we'd be able to get out there even faster to help clean up.
Pam asks, thank you, Stephen, for that. Yeah, I thought each town had to sign the plan, not the SWME as the representative for the town. In this case, this is the SWIP. This is the state solid waste plan requirement that SWMEs or independent towns submit a SWIP to us with a disaster plan. So we're looking for the SWME to sign this plan. You don't have to get each of your towns to sign it. We just want you to list the towns that you cover.
Okay, so I'm looking at this and my thought on this had been that there would be one plan for each town. So you're thinking that one plan is going to cover all of these towns and then the individual information for each town is going into this one plan?
That's right.
Because it's not a
It
town
seems
plan,
into-
it's a SWME plan.
Right, but it's going to be a pretty long plan. I mean, even I only have 10 towns, but some
And
of
that's
these
exactly
solid
why
waste
it's in
management
Excel.
managers-
Yeah, so Pam, let's unpack that. Go to tab A. So you'll put in your 10 town contacts right here. So this is going to be 10 rows. Done. Let's go to B.
Yes, but
You're going to put
Yes,
in
but when you get-
at least one hazardous staging area. Done. Ideally, you put in 10, but at least one. C. You're going to say 1 or 2 or 3 or 4 or 5 facilities that generally manage C&D and trash and where it's likely to go. This may not even be in the SWME region. I wonder if it doesn't have to be. This might be Gleason Road in Rutland district. And then D, you have to say what those stump dumps are. It sounded like you had 2 that you were thinking of. So there'd be 2 rows here, and then you would sign and you'd be done. That's it.
okay, well, you're going to get a very short one from me. We'll see how we go.
That's the intent. If you figured out how short this is, then we've done our job. It's not a plan with a capital P. It's a very small lowercase p. The big part in this whole thing is the inert debris site. Finding that, citing that, getting towns to agree. Chris has quite a challenge up in the NEK, having so many towns, figuring out if they'll work together and share with each other, or does each town cite a debris site? This is actually every single swimmy that has more than one town has this challenge. And I don't take it lightly. But if we're really to respond to the next disaster when we don't know where it's going to be, this is the best way to prepare. I guess that's where I'll leave us. Emily, thank you for context. Anything else from my Vermont emergency management colleagues that they wanted to say? Kim, thank you for the chime in that you've done.
Yeah, no problem. I don't have anything further. Thank you.
Nothing here, Josh. Thanks. I did put something in the chat as well as Kim. Hopefully that's helpful.
Let me just give a real nod of thanks to Vermont Emergency Management. We've brought this to them. We've probably had like 4 meetings with you guys. Emily created the first version of this, was very astute in her writing. And they've told us what they need. They need from communities to help Vermonters in need. And we've tried to tailor our vision back to what's reasonable. Very much open to the swimmies trying to do this and coming against roadblocks and bringing those roadblocks to us to consider. Again, this is to try and respond to the need in a disaster period. So happy to discuss this again with you all. If you have questions, submit those to us and we'll give it some consideration.
Yeah. I guess, sorry, I guess I would add, looking at trying to think if you want to do this, whether it's going to be FEMA eligible or not, is not really the choice we want to make for our communities. We need to do what's right to clean up. Obviously with the whole goal of trying to maximize federal funding. But everyone should know that FEMA debris costs are typically pretty eligible. They will not, pay for pretty obvious things. If you're pulling stuff off private property, unless they declare a whole event where you're allowed to do that and pull it to the right of way, they're not going to allow you to cut down random trees in an area that's not, a life threat situation. And all that guidance is sent out during the midst of a disaster to everyone. So it's not like you would have to go research what's eligible and what's not. So you would be not left with you'd have your hand held through this process, so to speak.
Thanks, Kim.
Yeah, you bet.
Pam?
Just one more question. So will you send out the latest template, the final template that we are going to use to work on?
Absolutely. We heard from Tom that the last signature page is confusing and inflammatory, or it really angers him. And I understand what you're trying to say, and maybe we can figure out a better place for our notation.
Yes.
Okay. Thank you all for engaging today. We're happy to host another one of these if you need it. I would say in the meantime, let's work through it with your A&R contact. That's Chris Beeling, Shannon Choquette, and Alyssa Eichler, and we'll see what we get. Thanks very much.
Everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Take care.
Bye.